You'll tell us when you're ready, Judge Molefe. Are you comfortable? All right. Good evening, and 1,000 apologies for keeping you waiting all this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
You hold a BProc and LLB degrees from what we used to call TEFLOP back in the day.
Yes.
And you have done many things in the legal sphere. So appears from your CV, including teaching, and you've participated at various legal bodies, doing many things, and you are one of the active members of the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges, not so?
Yes,
which
ma'am.
speaks very highly of you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice.
You practiced as an attorney for 25 years.
Yes, I did, ma'am.
And thereafter took up a position on the bench.
Yes, ma'am.
Where? In which division?
I started my first acting stint in Bloemfontein Division, where I acted for 2 terms. Then from there, I went to the Gauteng Division in Pretoria.
And that's where...
I was there until I was appointed.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
But you also have a long history with the Land Claims Court.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us a bit about your experience there?
I've acted almost on a yearly basis at the Land Claims Court. At one point, I was asked to act as a judge president of the Land Claims Court because the judge president was on leave. And I've sat in a number of cases in the Land Claims Court and have written quite a number of judgments there.
How long did you act as a judge president in that court?
I acted for a term. It was not for long. Actually, it was 2 weeks less than a term. I'm not sure of the exact date, but it was almost a term.
But you had a good stint.
I had a good stint, a very good stint.
You also acted at the Labour Appeal Court as well.
Yes, ma'am. I acted at the Labour Appeal Court for 2 terms, from January last year to May actually, because from June, the 1st of June last year, then I went to the SCA to act there.
And now you are acting at the Supreme Court of Appeal?
I've been acting at the Supreme Court of Appeal until Friday, the 30th of September.
How many terms did you...
I've acted for 4 terms at the SCA.
A whole 4 terms,
yes.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that your experience in the other courts, the LCC and the LAC, prepared you for the SCA?
I do indeed, Deputy Chief Justice, because then at the SCA there's no specialization. You get all types of cases. So I remember I was also on the panel where there was an appeal from the Land Claims Court, so it helped me a lot.
And how have you found your time at the SCA? Was it tough? Was it?
It's been very fulfilling, I must say. It's been very fulfilling. I was, from the moment I arrived, the now acting president, who was the deputy president then, I didn't even know him, but he phoned me before I arrived at the SCA the first term and spoke to me for almost an hour, inducting me and telling me the do's and the don'ts at the SCA, which I really, really appreciated. And most of the colleagues there were very helpful. I started acting when there was COVID and we were doing virtual hearings. But because it was my first stint, I decided to go to Bloemfontein, and I worked from Bloemfontein even if we were on virtual. And it really assisted me a lot because some of the experienced colleagues were also in Bloemfontein, even if it was virtual hearings. So I could meet with them, they could support me, they gave me a lot of support. I've been very happy.
Good. Have you been able to produce any judgments during your
Yes.
stint there?
Yes, Deputy.
How many?
Actually, I've scribed 7 judgments at the SCA. 2 of them have been reported, but because we only finished the term on Friday, I've got 2 other judgments, but the presiders haven't decided whether they're going to be reportable or not, because that's still being circulated. But at the moment, I've scribed 7 judgments, and I've got 2 reported judgments from the SCA during my stint there.
So you have 2 reserve judgments had during this past term?
I have 2 reserve judgments, but the first one I've circulated. The second one is not circulated yet.
All right, but both were had in
They
the
both
in
we
this
had,
last term?
yes.
All
yes,
right.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you struggle with the workload? How did you cope there? Well, I know that you come
maybe
from
because
a
I come
busy
from
division.
I come from the
Sorry?
one of the busiest divisions in the
Yeah,
country.
I was going to say that actually. I know
So
you
for-
come from a really busy division, but people usually complain that the kind of busy in the SA is more concentrated and intense.
It's more concentrated on the law and intense, and you also have to learn to work with other colleagues, because it's not like at the High Court where I decide to write the judgment and I'm happy with it, I send it out. When you are a scribe, you have to consider other colleagues' inputs. That's where I think, but other than that, I think the workload was, I could manage it. I didn't have a problem with the workload at all.
The issue of age has been raised by this body on a number of occasions. You turn 65 in a couple of weeks.
I'm turning 65 on the 26th of
Is
October.
is that too old? Is that something that should stop you from
Actually-
being appointed?
Actually, I've actually prepared a response to that. And thank you very much, Deputy Chief Justice, for asking me this question. Personally, I don't think age itself is a problematic construct. Rather, the institution that is populated by singularly elderly people and singularly young people, that's what I think the problem is. I might be on the higher end of the so-called age spectrum, but my age is accompanied by knowledge, experience. If I'm appointed, I'll continue using my wisdom, which I get from my age, to help and assist and reach people around me. You know, I also think that there is an immense social benefit to be found in transgenerational exchanges. We shouldn't just be restricted to young people and old people, because we all complement each other. So I don't know if you want me to talk about, because I've seen comments that within 6 years I'll be retiring.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask how many years you have left until you retire.
In the comments, they say I've got 6 years to retire, and I wish to say that I think 6 years is a great deal of time in terms of social and judicial change. 6 years is longer than most tertiary education or degrees. 6 years is more than the number of terms given to MPs and even presidents. So 6 years of quality judgment and meticulously considered have great value and profound effect on the lives of most of South Africa. So 6 years is a great deal of time to make a change, with all due respect.
And you are in excellent health, as far as I know.
Look at me.
All right. Two last aspects. The GCB laments the paucity of reported judgments that you have produced after 9 years sitting as a judge. They say you've produced only 5 reported judgments.
Yes.
And they say you may perhaps benefit from greater experience sitting in more complex matters. They don't say you should not be appointed.
But
just say you have not been all that productive and perhaps you need to be given more tougher work?
I beg to differ with that statement, Deputy Chief Justice Meyer. I haven't had only 5 reportable judgments. Let me start first with the Land Claims Court. I've had 3 reported judgments at the Land Claims Court. For the 2 terms I was at the Labour Appeal Court, I had 3 reportable judgments, to be exact, which I scribed. 3. I've had judgments which I didn't even include in my application. I've sat in full courts, in major judgments. Some of them I was sitting with other judges, and most of those judgments we all scribed because it was a court's judgment where the presider will allocate portions of the issues of the judgment for us to write. And I chose not to include them because they're court's judgment. 2 of those judgments were actually constitutional challenges. One to the Riotous Assemblies Act. One was a challenge to, it was a Correctional Service Act challenge. One of the sections in the Correctional Service was being challenged. And both those judgments even went to the Concord where they were confirmed. I was part of those judgments. And the issue of reportable judgment is something that we are unable to control as judges. I write a judgment, I write it reportable. It's taken to the librarian. I don't know who makes a decision whether to report the judgment or not. But be as it may, I don't have only 5 reported judgments in Johannesburg. There are much more than that.
Well, you've produced 7 in a year at the SA alone.
That's the thing. In terms of writing judgments, I've written more than 300 judgments since I was a judge. But I'm just talking about reported judgment. It's not 5 judgments which were reported.
All right. Lastly, the BLA also expresses some misgivings about your candidature. They first complained that you have not said why you have not indicated which judgments you think are significant as the questionnaire, the JSC questionnaire asks you to. And they also point out that you had a number of judgments. Something happened around May 2022 that requires explanation because you had a number of significant number of outstanding judgments which all seem to come from around that period.
Yes.
And then they say, to paraphrase you, mediocre, nothing stands out. You
Yeah.
don't stand out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Thank
have to
you
say
so
to
much.
this?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to correct a number of errors in the letter submitted by the Office of the General Secretary of the BLA. Firstly, the letter incorrectly states that I have acted for only 1 term at the LCA and 1 term at the SCA. I've acted at the LAC for 2 terms, in which I produced 3 reported judgments. I've acted at the SCA for 4 terms and not 1 term. During these terms at the SCA, I scribed 7 judgments. 2 of them are reportable. I was part of a panel at the SCA where there were 9 reported judgments. I was part of the panel. And I sat with colleagues in 18 unreported judgments. So what I'm saying is that for the 4 terms I was at the SCA, I sat in more than 34 matters. I also did 68 petitions during the 4 terms I was at the SCA. That's the first answer. With regard to the statement that I have significant number of outstanding judgments from my division, which came from May 2022 I would like to provide some clarification in that respect. Immediately after my third acting stint at the SCA, I returned to my division in the High Court, Pretoria. During this period, from the 11th of April, I finished at the SCA on the 30th of March. On the 11th of April, I started in Pretoria. And this period was for 7 weeks because it ended at the end of May when I started again at the SCA on the 1st of June. During this 7 period in Pretoria, I picked up 13 reserved judgments in 7 weeks. Those judgments are ranging from the urgent court, post-motion, appeals, and special motions. As I'm sitting here today, all those judgments have been handed down, except for one, which is presently with the researchers, which will be handed down this week after my interview.
All right. Thank you. Colleagues, do you have questions for this candidate? Yes, Commissioner Matolo-Dlodu.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. I just wanted to declare that I grew up, we went to university together with Judge Molefe, and we were partners when he was still in practice, where we thought we'll change the legal profession and prove a point that as a women we can make it, you know. So, but he left me behind and joined. So that's what I wanted to declare. But second, I just wanted to ask Judge Molefe that I know that she's very, very passionate about mentoring, and she's also have agreed to be a patron of Basadi ba Molao to encourage young practitioners to be able to stand up with confidence in court. If she goes to the SCA, will she still be able to do that?
Thank you, Commissioner Dlepu, for the question. Training and mentoring are my passion. As a practicing attorney, as you have already indicated, I was a lecturer at the Law Society School of Law for quite a number of years. I was also a senior examiner in the attorney's examination, the board exam. I uplifted many young women and reminded them that their efforts are just as valuable as those of their male counterparts. As a judge, because I'm passionate about training, I've conducted training to both judges and aspirant women judges under the auspices of SAJAY. I've also mentored university students under the auspices of the South African chapter, IAWJ. So it would be a real honor if I'm so pleased that I've been asked to be a patron of Basadi ba Molao, because that's my passion.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice.
AP Petze.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. Good evening, Judge Molefe.
Good evening, Acting President.
You have already told the Commission that you acted at the SCA in total for 4 terms.
Yes, sir.
And that you produced about seven judgments.
Yes, at the moment that's 7.
Those judgments that you produced, other than maybe cosmetic suggestions from the other members of the court, would you say that you produced them single-handedly?
I wouldn't say single-handedly. Because when I arrived at the SCA, I was told that the judgments are, even if you scribe, it's a judgment of the court. So I look forward to receiving any comments from my fellow judges when I'm the scribe. I wouldn't call any comment or, to be like cosmetic per se. I really appreciate all the input from my fellow colleagues when I'm scribing. And I'm open to the fact that I might be the scribe. It's not my judgment. It's the court's judgment.
Thank you for that answer. I've been informed by senior colleagues who had assigned you judgment to write that the other members of the panel made substantive changes to your draft, as one colleague put it, in order to knock it into good shape, and what I often euphemistically referred to as a judgment undergoing major or invasive surgery. What's your response to that?
Unfortunately, Acting President, I'm unable to respond to that because I don't know which judgment is referred to and which judgment was panel beated. I don't know which judgment is being referred to. So unfortunately, with all due respect, I'm unable to answer that question.
That's all the judgment. You mentioned 7 judgments.
Yes.
In all of them.
Yes.
That's what the presiders in those judgments told me.
There was a judgment which I presided with you, Acting President. Remember? One of the 7 judgments, you were the presider and I was the scribe.
If you could please raise your voice, I didn't hear the response.
I was saying that one of the judgments, the 7 judgments that I scribed, one of them you were the presider in that judgment.
Yes.
And I remember you referred me to one of the cases that you did. It was not panel beated. You said to me when you scribe, just check this case, which deals with the same issue.
But in one instance, I furnish you with substantive changes or suggestions, which in fact you adopted.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Do you think that you are ready to go and work in Bloemfontein?
I am ready to go and work in Bloemfontein. Actually, even during COVID, I preferred to work. I was one of the judges who worked in Bloemfontein because I felt that I was more productive and I have a chance to sit and talk to my clerk and to the researchers as well. So I'm ready to go and work in Bloemfontein, Acting President.
As you have told the Commission, your last acting stint at the SCA was during the past term, 3rd term, from
Yes,
1st of June to 30th of September.
Yes, sir.
And the first day of the term was the 15th of August,
Yes, sir.
Monday, the 15th of August, 2022.
Yes, sir.
And you were not at court on that day.
Yes,
And the head of court didn't know where you were.
I was not sitting on that day, Acting President. I traveled with one of my colleagues from Joburg on that day, and we arrived in Bloemfontein on Monday, but it was after tea. So we never attended tea on that day, on the 15th.
I was not aware of that. speaking for myself.
Yes, sir.
And that is not the only instance. Consistently during the term, you were not at court, and no one knew about your whereabouts. So much so, one of the colleagues came to see me and informed me that he had a petition with you. He had not heard from you, as you were supposed to have approached him in terms of our conventions, and he took the trouble to walk over to your chambers. You were not there, and your secretary informed him that you left on a Wednesday afternoon and said that you'd be back the following Tuesday. And he wanted to find out if I knew anything about that.
I don't think that statement is accurate, with all due respect. I don't think it's accurate. There were only 2 occasions when I wasn't in court. One of the occasions, me and one of my colleagues came and approached you, AP, in your chambers, because our landlord informed us that we have to vacate the place. It was on a Wednesday, because she had booked medical conference people 2 years before COVID, and they cancelled. So we approached you in your chambers, AP. I don't know if you remember, because I know it's been a very busy term. And we requested the permission, because we're not sitting on Thursday and Friday. We requested the permission that we work from home, and we were back on Sunday. We drove back together on Sunday.
No, I'm
The
aware
other
of that
occasion, yes.
particular incident.
The
Only
o-
once during the term.
That's why I'm saying it's inaccurate, and I need to explain. The second occasion which occurred, I had a family problem in Cape Town. My daughter had an operation. I left on a Friday. I was supposed to come back on a Monday. She complicated. I had a petition with one of my colleagues, which arrived on Tuesday. I phoned her. It was a her. And she said to me, "Don't worry, we'll discuss the petition tomorrow." Maybe the only oversight on my part was not this instant. I didn't come to you, Acting President. I must be honest. I didn't come to you to ask for permission or to phone to say, "I've got an emergency. I'll only come back on Tuesday." I actually enjoy working in court. I actually enjoy working in the office in my chambers. And it's better for me to work in chambers than to work at home.
And I want to put a general proposition to you.
Yes, sir.
Do you accept that staying away from court without making prior arrangements gradually and relentlessly weakens discipline in the court?
I do accept that, sir. I do accept that.
And doing so is also an indication of lack of respect for the institution.
Yeah, that's the message that it sent, that you have no respect for, and which is not the case in my part.
No, I'm just putting a general proposition
Yes,
to you.
I agree with you, Acting
Do you
President.
accept that as a general proposition?
Yes, I do accept that. I do accept that.
And what you will not admit to is the fact that more than once, more than twice, you stayed away from court without making prior
I
arrangements?
admit that I didn't make prior arrangement with the Cape Town incident or occasion.
And you didn't see the need, even when you returned, to inform you about your challenges?
Yes, I really do apologize. It was an oversight. Actually, even the day I came to you to ask to leave to work from home, that Wednesday, I went to my presider who had just circulated a judgment to check with him to say, I won't be in court on Thursday and Friday. Are you going to have a conference? And he said to me, no, we'll have a conference on Monday. I went to my presider, who I knew had a judgment which was ready for conferencing. So I'm sorry if I send that message. I'm very respectful. I respect people. I respect authority. And I've taught that you earn the respect.
Thank you. Thank you, DCJ.
Thank you, Acting President.
Thank you, President Betsi. Commissioner Matthews?
Thank you, DCJ. Quick question. Look, I asked Judge because I asked Judge this question because of the statement from the PLA, where they say Judge Molefe does possess a potential for the SCA, but considering the other candidates, she does not really stand out. However, when seen on the basis of the transformation imperatives, she could be a welcome addition to the SCA. That needs a significant number of women. Now, that's the statement which calls me to ask this question. Do you agree with me that for a candidate to be appointed at the High Court, at that level, one would look onto the potential of the candidate, simply because, remember, he might have limited time of acting and so forth. But now, for the SCA, for the High Court such as the SCA, the candidate must demonstrate that first, he or she is an accomplished judge, complete. That can be seen in terms of the jurisprudence that arise from the judgments that the candidate has written and the contribution. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with you, Commissioner Nunyetsi. I do agree with you.
Yes. Now, this statement of the PLA seem to find resonance with what the GCP is saying, because the GCP says they only have 5 judgments.
Reported.
Yes, sorry. In 9 years,
Yeah,
there are
5
only
reported
5
judgments.
reported judgments.
Yes.
And when I look in terms of your response to that, I hear now, but your response, you don't contradict that statement to say, no, hang on, it's not 5, for instance, I have more than that. Here are the judgments.
Yeah,
Or do you agree with that statement?
I have a list with me of judgments which I wrote in Pretoria.
No, reported.
Reported, the list is from the librarian, and from the list of reported, it's not all the judgment that I wrote, but from this list only, the Pretoria list. There's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, my problem is that you mentioned
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. From this list only, from the librarian, my reported judgments,
could be
it's 13.
13
It's
reported.
13. And it's not all my judgments.
Yes, it's not only 5.
Yes.
Do those judgments include those that you said they were by the court Remember you said
Yes,
some
yes.
judgments are by
Yeah,
the
where
court.
I was sitting-
Look, you were sitting and you wrote as the court.
Where I was sitting as a full court.
Yes.
There's only one judgment which is reported here, which I was sitting as a full court.
It's part of that
It's
13.
part of that 13.
But
yes.
when a judgment is written by the court, how does a reader, somebody else who received the judgment is written the court, how does he pick up and say, oh, paragraph 2 of this judgment was written by Judge Molefe, paragraph 10 was written. How can you say that is your judgment? On what are they? Look, what I'm trying to say is, how would you assist me while I'm reading that judgment to say, all right, this is for Judge Molefe and this for another judge?
And I agree with you. It's very difficult because that's why the heading does not, it only says the court. And like I said, it's the presider, that is the senior judge who will be presiding, who will decide that despite the fact that we are sitting as a full court, 3 judges, I want all of us to write the judgment. It's not my decision to decide that. And you are right, as a reader, you wouldn't know who actually wrote the judgment. It's the court's judgment.
This is the last question, that's the end. What I just want to, I mean, I've been looking on your judgments and
Yes.
other, I have no doubt that you have made a contribution. But the point I want to make, the SCA, in my view, should be in a position to, first, because it's a national appeal court, I mean, so to speak. That's a national appeal court. And in terms of jurisprudence that must come from that court, there must be development of the law and there must be precedents sitting. So meaning that a judge who goes to that court should not just have a potential, it must be a complete judge. That, I think, that's the only statement I want to say.
I want to respond and say, I think I'm a complete judge, with all due respect. I think I am a complete judge.
I just think you are not. What I'm saying is a proposition that a judge who goes there should be a complete, not just somebody who has a potential, meaning that complete in the sense that written judgments, publications, there is a measurable work upon which you can say, this is a judge who has developed this.
Yes, I agree with that proposition, Commissioner Noteti.
Can I make
Thank you,
a quick
Commissioner.
follow-up?
No, yes. Follow-up.
Yes.
You may proceed, Commissioner Malem.
Thank you very much, Acting President. No, I want us to simplify this thing so that we, the laymen, understand it, Judge. Let's leave the 13. How many reported judgments are yours? Because they say you only have 5 that you authored alone and your name is there. Not the 13 that involves other people.
There's only one judgment, Commissioner Malema.
Yes.
In the 13, there was a court's judgment.
Thank
and
you.
other than the 13 judgments, which have the list I've gotten from the librarian, I've written 3 judgments at the LAC. It was a full court, but I was the scribe. Those were my judgments. I've written judgments in the land claims court. Those were my judgments.
So how many are they, all of them?
I would say I've got 20 at the moment.
No, not the ones that you wrote, the ones that are reported.
The ones that are reported.
Yes.
The 3 LAC judgments that I'm mentioning are reported.
Including the one in
Yes.
Pretoria.
That's correct.
The one who's saying from 13 is 1, you mean Pretoria?
Yes, Pretoria, yes.
Then 3
From
plus
the LAC,
1.
yes. And I've got 2 reported judgments from the land claims court, which
Then-
were written by me.
Then 6.
Yes.
So we have 6 reported
12.
judgment to a name,
Yes.
plus 12 where you wrote with others, which become a court judgments?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may add, this exclude the SCA judgments, because even if I write the judgment at the SCA, it's 5 judges, it's the judgment of the court, but I'm the scribe.
Thank you, Acting
Thank-
President.
Thank you,
Oh,
Commissioner
thank you.
Malema.
Deputy Chief Justice.
Oh, go ahead, JP Molefe.
Thank you very much, DCJ. Judge Molefe, I just want to deal with this court judgment because it keeps rearing its head.
Yes, sir.
Can you confirm to the Commission that in those instances where you sit in a matter that comes out as a court judgment, those are special motions as opposed to ordinary opposed motions?
Yes, JP Mlambo, I can confirm that. And
Right.
actually, most of those judgments were the judgments which were brought on urgent during COVID, which were challenging mostly the Disaster Management Act. So there were special motions which were very urgent.
Well, that leads to my next question. Your own experience as a senior judge in the division, you've sat in a number of special motions yourself. Now, I want you to tell the Commission the time it takes for a court judgment to come out compared to a special motion by a single judge.
Sure. It takes a long time. The judgment which I've just mentioned that is going to be handed down this week, it was a special motion which I was doing alone in Pretoria. And it was a complex matter which I sat for 2 days. So, and I think I should mention that when I wrote all those 13 judgments which I picked up from Pretoria as reserve judgments, I was actually working at the SCA as well. But I made sure that my judgments are not unduly delayed. I have them all handed down. It takes quite a long time to write the judgment, JP Mlambo.
What takes a long time? When you write on your own or the court judgment?
I don't know how to respond to that. It doesn't take long when it's a court judgment because the 3 of you contribute towards the judgment on different issues.
Yeah, because I thought you'll share with the Commission that
Yes, it takes
it's
longer.
much more expedient.
It's much more expedient, especially in an urgent matter like which we got, to the 3 judges, each one write an issue, a legal issue in the judgment. So within less than a week, the judgment is out. It's quicker than when I'm writing a judgment, a special motion judgment on my own.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, JP
DCJ.
Mlambo.
Commissioner Moman? Oh, you pass. Commissioner Pillay?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good evening, Justice Molefe.
Good evening.
I just have one question. I just want to make sure I got the stats correct. Did you mention that you wrote 300 judgments in total?
For
More or
the
less?
9 years?
Yes.
Yes, if not more.
Yeah, if not more. And then I picked up from your application that there was only one judgment that was successfully appealed.
Yes, there was one judgment, and actually that judgment was I wrote it when I was an acting judge in Pretoria. And it had to do with vicarious liability, and the SCA appealed.
And one judge,
yes.
and then
They
one
ruled
judgment that was
against me.
unsuccessfully appealed.
Yes.
So did you only ever have 2 appeals against any of your judgments?
No, I didn't. Those are the judgments which I mentioned in my form.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense because I just want to look at your success rate. If you've had 300 or more judgments, how many of them were successfully appealed in total?
How many of them were successfully appealed against
Yes.
my judgment?
Yes,
There was only one judgment.
that's the one.
The one, yes.
And how many were unsuccessfully appealed?
There were 2 at the SCA.
All right, but so you've only had 3 appeals against your judgments.
The appeals to the SCA you get appeals to the full courts.
Right.
Commissioner Molefe?
Thank you very much, Acting CJ. I just want to understand this thing of acting. So you can be a full judge. When you go to the Supreme Court of Appeal for the, even if you are a full judge of the High Court, it's a new environment, it's a new style of writing, it's a new way of doing things. So that thing of acting, does it give you an exposure and somehow improve your skill and teaches you how things are done differently at that level?
It does a lot, because you learn a lot from permanent judges who are there. And that's why even when you scribe a judgment, you take their inputs because you learn. You learn a lot from acting.
And when a senior judge, well-experienced judge, who has been at the SCA for quite some time, gives you, the acting judge, a substantive correction to what you have written, don't you take that as not in the negative, but in the positive, and that you are learning and you appreciate that you're getting some substantive input from a well-informed judge, whereas a deputy president or acting president? Should that be counted in the negative or positive?
I wouldn't agree with you more, Commissioner Malema. To
So
me, it's, and I always tell myself I learn every day. I appreciate when especially senior judges make comments to my judgments.
And therefore, it will be unfair for anyone to say, I've made substantive inputs to a judgment, speaking that to be meaning the negative. Because that is the whole idea of getting you to act, to learn from senior judges, to learn how the higher court works, so that if you are appointed there full-time, you don't start to learn as a full-time judge, but you allow them. Even if you are a high court judge, it's a different terrain and it has got its own dynamics, and you have to learn those dynamics. And substantive inputs is but part of what you are there to learn.
I agree with you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Malema.
Thank you very much.
All right. Commissioner Morumo Achai?
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Justice. Good evening, Judge.
Good evening, sir. I can't
I'm,
see your name.
I'm also trying to understand how the Supreme Court of Appeal works. Because if I'm a litigant and I appeal to that court, and I know that at least I have 5 judges who are independent, who can be able to apply their minds in the matter, and perhaps maybe persuade each other one way or the other, I accept that proposition. I just want to understand on this substantive comments issue. Generally within a panel, all the judges I just want to understand who makes substantive comments, and are all the judges in a panel, irrespective of your level of seniority or whether you are a junior, are you able to make comments at a substantive level? Let me just make an example. Maybe as a junior judge, are you able to make substantive comments to a senior judge? And are those comments being taken? Like, what? I'm getting confused on the operations of the SCA in that regard.
Okay. Can I try to? I see it's Professor, but I can't see your name, Professor.
Marumo Achai.
Marumo, thank you. Thank you for your question. I'll tell you how it works. Let's say I'm an acting judge, like Commissioner Malema has said. I'm an acting judge, even if I'm a permanent judge in the High Court. At the SCA, I'm an acting judge. And I have to scribe a judgment. There are unwritten rules, and I've always said maybe we should be inducted, because the presider, who's the senior judge, I'm scribing. Some of the presiders would want you to send your first draft to them first so that they can make their comments. Some of the presiders will say you can circulate it to all 4 other judges. When you circulate the judgment, you expect to get comments from all the judges. and you look at the comments and you decide whether you incorporate them in your judgment. Like I've already said, it's a judgment of the court. Unless, of course, if I'm dissenting with the decision, but the presider, who's the senior judge, get to see the judgment first and has to make his comments or contributions. I hope I've answered.
No, you have. I think my general confusion is in relation to the general things that are
Yeah.
happening in that court.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Because that's burdensome. You need to collect that. Have you finished, Commissioner?
Yes, I have, Deputy Chief Justice.
Okay, Commissioner Dodov?
Yeah, thank you. This is just a small point. You became a judge in 2013,
That's correct.
and you only started acting at the level of the SCA last year.
Yes, sir.
Why did it take you so long to get this opportunity?
To answer your question, Commissioner, you get invited to come and act. You don't go and ask the president or the JP of a court that you should come and act. You wait to get invited.
Okay, thank you.
And I was invited only then, last year.
It means a person who invited you, and I would imagine is the president,
It's President
could have
Maya.
seen something, a sparkle out of you, a modicum of potential to can act at that level of the judiciary.
I think that you
Now, my question would be, over and above that, you just said, I bring experience. What is it that you can bring if you are appointed that is different, that is exceptional, given your age?
wisdom coming to age. But having said that, I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but I've acquired a vast and extensive experience of the law during my 9 years, even if I only started acting at the SCA last year as a judge and one of the busiest division. And I've also been fortunate enough to have an opportunity to act at the Land Claims Court and the Labour Appeal Court. And I've written judgments on a variety of legal aspects, as well as addressing constitutional issues and principles. So I also strive towards an accessible and sound justice system that promotes our constitutional values at all times.
No, it's okay. Thank you, DCJ.
Just a quick follow-up. I forgot this issue of the age and the retirement. The Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa was appointed Chief Justice when he was left with how many years?
I think it was 2.
2 years.
I'm not sure.
Is it unheard of for a judge to be appointed to any other level when he's left with 5 or 6 years?
6 years, Commissioner Malema, 6 years.
Is it unheard of in the judiciary?
It's not.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, DCJ. Judge Molefe, there's just one aspect that I want to clear with you. The convention at the SCA has always been, as when you are allocated a judgment, you write the judgment, and when you are done, you circulate it to the other members of the bench.
Thank you.
Isn't that the conventional?
Thank you, Acting President. Thank you for that. But I've said with senior judges who specifically said, before you circulate the judgment, you must send it to me.
I know, speaking for myself, I have had a preview of a judgment before it is circulated, only when the scribe says, could you look at this judgment and see if you are satisfied with what I've produced? And invariable, I would then give the scribe my comments and suggestions.
I've noted that, Acting President, but if I may, my first reportable judgment at the SCA, I circulated it first to everyone. And I was told that I shouldn't have done that. It was supposed to have gone first to the presider. And I've met senior judges who are presiding who would say, circulate the judgment. So, and I'm prepared to obey everybody's style. If the presider wants the judgment first, I've got no problem with that. If he wants it to be circulated, I've got no problem with that.
Thank you very much for raising this, and I will discuss it with all the presiders at my earliest opportunity, beginning of next term.
Thank you, Acting
Thank you.
President. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to what APPC raised with you now, are you aware that the SCA does actually have an induction committee which he chairs, and in which Justice Madobo, before he was elevated to the Concord, was very active in? And I do suspect that he would have been one of the acting judges that he worked with.
Deputy Chief Justice, actually, after that incident where I thought I made a wrong decision by circulating and I was called to order, I requested an induction, and there was an induction made. That was last year. There was an induction which was, we were called for an induction, and
Okay.
yeah.
Well, things might have gone lax because of the COVID outbreak, and we were all working from home.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, he's covered the other thing. Okay, the last thing is that, as far as I know, in all my 17 years at the SCA, all panel members in a matter, junior, acting, senior, are fully entitled to comment, and those comments may take whatever form. They may be substantive, they may be cosmetic.
Yes.
And, well, a colleague is, of course, free to disagree with you and refuse to take them.
It's true.
If they are not persuaded. You
Yes.
agree with?
I do agree
That
with
has been
you.
your experience.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief Justice.
You had your hand up at some stage. Do you still want to pose questions? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, DCJ. Good evening, Judge.
Good evening, ma'am.
I'm a little concerned about your application. There are many omissions and some inaccuracies, and I just want to ask you to respond to that. We spent some time trying to sort out how many reported judgments you had, and I'm not sure why you didn't list them. Likewise, we had to spend time how many of your judgments had ever been to the SCA. You'd only chosen 2, inexplicably. You didn't say why your judgments were significant, which judgments you thought were significant. You
Yes,
didn't explain why,
I didn't.
which was part of it.
Yes.
Page 11, where you asked for reported judgments. The one is not even properly cited. It took me ages to find it because it's not
Page-
properly cited.
page-
National
Sorry, ma'am, you said
Page 11.
11.
Number 2, National Director of Public Prosecutions ex parte. That's all that's there.
That's the citation. It was an ex parte application by the National Prosecuting Authority.
And it has no citation, no year, no number,
Yes.
no.
I think it was a mistake on my part.
Then 3 is an attachment, which is Annex B. Then which cases have been reported?
Sorry, I'm looking
Yeah.
for my application. You say page 11.
Page 11, yes. Cases are under clause 16.
That's mine. It's not page 11. Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am, I got it.
So you see there's an incomplete citation there.
Yeah, it doesn't have the... But if you look at that page 11, I've made an annexure because I had more cases to put in than the space allocated. So I made an annexure to all the cases with the
Yes.
citations at the back. I wrote C annexure.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's my next question. You say C attachment. Then the next question, 16.2, which of the cases have been reported? And you say all of the above. But it's not true that all the cases in Annex B have been reported. Many of them have not been reported. So
All these cases until 10, the annexures list, these are reported judgments.
well, not according to the citations here. That's why the GCB said there are only 4 or 5 reported judgments, because that's what appeared on your application. There's no letter of good standing in this application.
A letter of good standing from where?
Well, it's supposed to be part of your application to have a letter of good standing, isn't it?
A tiny.
Judges don't, excuse me. Excuse me then. I take that one back. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned that, there are a lot of, there's carelessness. There's an omission around why judges are significant, judgments are significant. I'm concerned about the quality of the application, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
I've noted your concern, and I can't argue with that. So I've noted it.
Was that all, Commissioner? Okay. Commissioners on the virtual platform, do you have questions for Judge Molefe?
I have no questions. Thank you, Deputy CJ.
None from you too, Commissioner Bernard?
No question.
We don't have any more questions for you, Judge Molefe. Thank you so much for presenting yourself before this commission and allowing us to have our way with you.
Thank you so much.
You are excused.
Thank you so much to the Deputy Chief Justice and to the Commissioner for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.